Muslims across the globe are celebrating Eid Al-Adha, one of the most important events on the Islamic calendar. But in Gaza, Palestinian celebrants are marking their second Eid under Israeli bombardment. Israel's blockade has left most families with very little to eat during the festival, which is usually marked by sharing meals together.
For these children, Eid Al-Adha holidays were usually full of celebrations, with new clothes, gifts and sweets. The family of Tahrir Abu Jazar would sacrifice an animal and enjoy meals together. That reality has drastically changed. This Gaza family is celebrating Eid with leftover lentils and rice.
We used to have meat and liver for a meal in Eid, and children would be happy about Eid's overall atmosphere. There are no Eid celebrations now, as there's no new clothes or sacrificial meat or monetary gifts or joy.
Those who have the means traditionally slaughter a sheep or cow and share part of the meat with the poor as a vital act of charity. Yet for 3 months, no fresh meat has been permitted to enter the Gaza Strip. Nearly all the territory's homegrown sheep, cattle and goats are dead after 20 months of Israeli bombardment and ground offenses. Eid is also a time to remember the loved ones lost in war. Tens of thousands of people, including a large number of children, have been killed. There is no Eid for Hannah, who is in Ramallah in the West Bank for cancer treatment of her son. Back home in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike killed one of her daughters.
After her death, there is nothing. There is no Eid left, and there is no life left for us to live Eid. There is no feeling of Eid, no feeling of any other feelings except sadness and loss.
Aid to around 2 million people in Gaza remains largely suspended. Outside the tents, some children, dressed in torn clothes, are still celebrating Eid with whatever they have.
And humanitarian groups say the rate of acute malnutrition among children in Gaza has nearly tripled in the past few months in comparison to the ceasefire period this year when aid flowed more freely. According to a UN report, there's been a sharp increase in severe cases of acute malnutrition where the condition becomes life-threatening. Israel recently let in some supplies after an 11-week blockade, but aid remains largely suspended after deadly shootings at the handful of distribution centres allowed, backed by the US and Israel. Let's go live to Gaza, where UNICEF spokesman James Elder has just returned the past couple of days. What sort of help are you able to provide the children of Gaza under the latest conditions?
It's desperate, Ben. On one hand, look, UNICEF's mandate is so broad, so we still do a lot of cash transfers. We keep the desalination plants running, which is some fresh, clean water for people. We still do some nutritional supplies, but we're well aware when it comes to nutrition, life-saving nutrition for children and mothers, we are down at 10 to 20% because of the blockade, another blockade. And because of the level of explosions, bombs and missile strikes, we've had 3-month blockades almost over the course of this war. Each time we get near a point of famine, then the Israeli authorities just lessen them a little bit because of international pressure. As that fades, they tighten them again. But famine, once that happens, Ben, you've already lost a lot of people. It's mass death. Starvation is different. Starvation is when the body starts to eat its own muscles and when there is cognitive decline. That's happening. Children's bodies are not waiting for a declaration. So again, we are facing a man-made nutritional crisis for Gaza's youngest children.
What have you been seeing in your time there?
I think a couple of things strike me. This is my 5th time, Ben, since the horrors of the 7th of October. One is the nutritional status, no doubt, both in hospitals. I'm seeing malnourished children who will not be alive next week. I see people everywhere doing that universal symbol of, hand to mouth, food, teenage boys lifting their shirts at a car window in tears, showing their ribs. Hospitals, I've seen probably more than 100 children with the most gruesome wounds of war, being little girls and boys, fourth-degree burns and limbs missing and open wounds. The difference this time is I'm seeing those children and they just don't have the painkillers. The medication is also blocked from coming in. So now it's something you hear as well. These blood-curdling screams. When I saw a little girl 2 days ago who's had a double amputation at her hips and no painkillers. A little boy who went to this militarized aid site and there was suddenly shooting and he got shrapnel from a tank shell. And he's got shrapnel throughout his pancreas and his stomach and is screaming in pain, does not have painkillers. So I think that's something very different I'm seeing right now. The sheer weight of injured children is the same. It's been consistent, but the lack of painkillers is something you don't just see, but you hear.
So very little food, very little medical supplies. How common is theft of this humanitarian aid, which is Israel's justification for restricting it to a trickle?
It's an important point. During the ceasefire where hostages went home and humanitarian aid flowed, it was 500 trucks a day to 400 distribution points. And there was no looting because looting occurs. Looting is done by civilians. It's a simple economics, I guess, absolute scarcity. When you deprive an entire population of food and then you allow the United Nations a few trucks down only one route, creating the circumstances for looting, it'll happen. And it's being stolen by everyday people because they are absolutely desperate. But it was shown during the ceasefire, when you allow aid to flow, then there is no looting. It's very, very simple. What's happening now is that it's almost the circumstances are being created for looting so as to sideline a system, a humanitarian system, Ben, that's worked since World War II, in scores of countries around the world. It's what the United Nations does. Now we have 3 or 4 distribution points run by military contractors where children are being killed as they try to access this aid. It's not aid, it's food being dumped. Aid, of course, goes to where people need it. You can't ask grandmothers and sick people and amputees and children to walk 20 kilometres. You cannot use aid as bait. That's what's being done right now.
James Elder, UNICEF spokesperson in Gaza, thank you very much for bringing us the very latest.
Now, the controversial US and Israeli-backed group distributing aid in Gaza says it has reopened 2 of its sites. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation had halted operations following a series of deadly shootings. But satellite images taken on Thursday morning show the foundation-run aid points near the southern city of Gaza to be almost empty. It's unclear when the other sites will reopen. Now, Hamas officials, medics and the Red Cross say dozens of Palestinians were killed while trying to get food in recent days. Condemnation of the IDF's actions in Gaza is growing. Speaking in Paris, Brazil's president accused Israel of premeditated genocide.
What is happening in Gaza is not a war. What is happening in Gaza is a genocide carried out by a highly trained army against women and children. That is what is happening, and that is what humanity must denounce.
Well, speaking at the same press conference, French President Emmanuel Macron warned that for the people of Gaza, time is running out.
The next few days will be decisive, so I always prefer to hope. We are going to step up the pressure in coordination with the Americans to obtain a ceasefire and the resumption of humanitarian operations. At the same time as we prepare, as you know, the conference on 18th of June with Saudi Arabia, which is intended to build a way for a mechanism for recognizing Palestine and a collective security mechanism for the whole region.
Let's get more on the situation in Gaza from Olga Cherevko, who speaks for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. She joins us from Gaza. Welcome to DW. Is it good news that these 2 Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites in the south of the territory have reopened?
Thanks very much for having me. We have really made our position very clear. We're not part of this mechanism, and We cannot be part of any scheme that is in contravention with humanitarian principles. People should never be risking their lives to find food. We also cannot be part of any scheme that puts people at such risk and also excludes large areas of Gaza from actually being able to obtain this aid and excludes people with, for example, mobility issues or who cannot come for any other reasons to these areas to collect supplies.
That's clear. You want no part of it. That wasn't really my question. My question was, in this desperate situation, do you welcome the news that these two sites in southern Gaza have reopened?
Look, again, I want to reiterate that the scheme that is set up to put people at risk is not something that we can support. And I think the disturbing reports that we have seen from people being killed and injured, trying to find food and trying to survive, is not something that we can support and welcome, let's say.
So while the GHF sorts itself out, does that mean that the 2 million people at risk of famine in Gaza are getting nothing at all? What is happening in terms of aid?
So the Israeli government, the Israeli authorities have allowed a limited volume of aid to be entering Gaza since the 19th of May. And of course, we have been appealing for much more to be done and to enter, because what has been allowed to enter and what has been able to enter so far is less than a drop in the ocean to address the needs of the people who have been deprived of everything for almost 80 days. And of course, the hunger crisis is getting worse and worse, as well as the level of desperation on basically every level of survival.
The Israeli government has banned the UN's Agency for Palestinian Affairs from Gaza. So what is the UN able to do in the territory? What are you doing there now?
So we, as OCHA, as the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, we coordinate a humanitarian response. And what is important to point out is that providing aid and humanitarian response is much more than giving a box of food to somebody. It's about providing services, it's about providing other supplies and making sure that the actual root cause of the issue is addressed here to alleviate the suffering of the people. So of course we continue to provide services as much as we can, as much as the situation allows, despite the very high insecurity around us and the obviously ongoing operations. And we provide services like healthcare, protection services, mental health support, education, health, water and sanitation, and much, much more, of course.
Okay. So given that, and given that you're there in Gaza at the moment, give us an idea of what the situation there on the ground is like now.
Well, it's the worst we've ever seen it. I've been here for several years now, and I've been here most of this war, and I have never seen it in a state that it is now. I just came back from Gaza City today. Obviously, the mass displacement that is taking place all over Gaza is very evident. The number of tents that have sprung up in the north as well is really, I haven't seen such a number before. And just 2 days ago, I came back from leave, and as soon as we entered Gaza, we were met by hundreds, if not thousands, of starving people who were, all of them were asking us when food is coming.
Right. Desperate situation. Thanks for talking us through it. Olga Cherevko from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.